The gavel slammed, and the courtroom held its breath. Ethan Carter, barely 17, stood trembling in an orange jumpsuit, his wrists cuffed, as Judge Margaret Hensley's voice cut through the air. Life without parole. The words were a blade, slicing through the dreams of a boy who'd only wanted to love freely in a town that refused to understand. In the small town of Willow Creek, Ohio, where cornfields stretched under endless skies and church steeples defined the skyline, Ethan had always been an outsider. Born to a single mother who worked double shifts at the diner, he'd grown up with second-hand clothes and a heart full of stories he told himself to escape. At 15, he realized he was gay, a truth that felt like a secret treasure until it became a target. Willow Creek wasn't a place for rainbow flags or pride parades. It was a place where whispers turned into fists, and differences were sins. Ethan's troubles began the summer he turned 16, when he kissed his best friend, Caleb, under the bleachers after a football game. Caleb, terrified of being outed, told the wrong people. The news spread like wildfire, and soon Ethan faced taunts, shoves, and a brick through his bedroom window with "faggot" scrawled in red paint. But Ethan was stubborn. He refused to hide. He wore a rainbow pin to school, a quiet act of defiance that made him a hero to some and a villain to others. One night, at a bonfire party by the lake, Ethan was cornered by Derek Mason, a 19-year-old linebacker with a reputation for cruelty. Derek, fueled by beer and bigotry, swung at Ethan, knocking him to the ground. Ethan fought back, his fist connecting with Derek's jaw. The fight ended in chaos, but it was Ethan who was arrested when Derek's father, a deputy sheriff, arrived. The charge? Assault with intent to harm. The truth? Derek had been the aggressor, but in Willow Creek, truth bent to power. Mia Alvarez, a 30-year-old public defender fresh from Cleveland, took Ethan's case pro bono. With her sharp wit and unyielding passion for justice, Mia saw in Ethan the same fire she'd felt as a Latina kid fighting prejudice in her own hometown. She worked tirelessly, digging into Derek's history, uncovering witnesses who saw him provoke the fight. But Willow Creek's courtroom was Judge Hensley's domain, a 60-year-old woman known for her iron rulings and conservative values. Mia pleaded for leniency, citing Ethan's age, his clean record, and the hate-fueled attack he'd endured. The judge was unmoved. "Actions have consequences," she said, sentencing Ethan to life, a punishment wildly disproportionate for a teenage brawl. The courtroom erupted. Ethan's mother, Sarah, sobbed in the back row. Lucas Reed, a 35-year-old black gay man who ran the town's only LGBT support group, stood up, his voice shaking with rage. "This isn't justice. This is a vendetta." Lucas had known Ethan since he started attending the group's secret meetings in the community center basement. He'd seen the boy's courage, his quiet strength, and now he watched it crumble under the weight of a system stacked against him. As Ethan was led away, his eyes met Lucas's, a silent plea for hope. Lucas clenched his fist around the rainbow flag pin on his jacket, vowing to fight for Ethan. Mia, too, refused to give up. She filed an appeal, but the odds were grim. Ohio's appellate courts rarely overturned Hensley's rulings. The town buzzed with division. Some cheered the sentence, calling Ethan a troublemaker. Others, led by Lucas, organized protests outside the courthouse, their signs reading "Free Ethan" and "Love is not a crime." Mia spent sleepless nights poring over case law, her small apartment littered with coffee cups and legal pads. She reached out to national LGBT advocacy groups, hoping to amplify Ethan's story. One group connected her with a journalist, Emily Chun, a 28-year-old Asian-American writer for a progressive news outlet. Emily's article, "A Teen's Fight for Love in a Town That Hates," went viral, sparking outrage across the country. Petitions circulated, and Ethan's name became a rallying cry. But in Willow Creek, the backlash grew. Mia's car was vandalized, and Lucas received death threats. One evening, as Mia sat in her office, her phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize, but the voice on the other end was unmistakable. The U.S. Attorney General, Rebecca Lawson, a figure known for her bold stance on civil rights. "Ms. Alvarez," she said, We're looking into Ethan Carter's case. This sentence is an abomination. Prepare for a federal review. Mia's heart raced. Could this be the lifeline Ethan needed? But the fight was far from over. Derek's father, Deputy Sheriff Mason, had influence in Willow Creek, and he wasn't about to let his son's reputation or his own be tarnished. He rallied the town's old guard, spreading lies about Ethan's dangerous behavior. Judge Hensley, too, doubled down, refusing to reconsider her ruling. As Mia and Lucas prepared for the federal review, they knew they were up against a town that clung to its prejudices like a lifeline. Ethan, meanwhile, sat in a juvenile detention center, his days filled with gray walls and whispered slurs from guards. He wrote letters to his mother, promising he'd stay strong. In one, he scrawled, "I'm not sorry for who I am. I just wish they'd see me." Those words fueled Mia's resolve. She and Lucas planned a rally, hoping to show the world that Ethan wasn't alone. The rally drew hundreds of locals, activists, even strangers moved by Emily's article. Rainbow flags waved under the Ohio sun, and Lucas's voice boomed through a megaphone. "We're here for Ethan, for every kid who's been told they don't belong." Mia watched, her chest tight with hope and fear. The federal review was days away, and the Attorney General's involvement had shaken Willow Creek's foundations. But would it be enough to free Ethan? The rally outside Willow Creek's courthouse was a kaleidoscope of color and courage. Rainbow flags fluttered alongside signs demanding justice, and the air hummed with chants of "Free Ethan." Lucas Reed stood at the forefront, his deep voice steady despite the death threats he'd received. At 35, he'd seen his share of hate as a black gay man in Ohio, but he'd also seen the power of community. Beside him, Mia Alvarez clutched a stack of legal documents, her eyes scanning the crowd for allies and threats. The federal review loomed, a rare intervention that had Willow Creek's power brokers on edge. Deputy Sheriff Mason, Derek's father, watched from across the street, his arms crossed, flanked by a group of loyalists. His influence ran deep. He'd been a fixture in the sheriff's department for 20 years, and his word was law in this town. To him, Ethan's case was personal. Derek had come home that night with a bruised jaw, whining about that queer kid, and Mason had ensured Ethan paid the price. Now, with the Attorney General's office sniffing around, Mason felt his grip slipping. Mia had spent the week preparing for the review, working with Emily Chan to keep Ethan's story in the headlines. Emily's latest article detailed the systemic bias in Willow Creek's justice system, citing stats. LGBT youth in Ohio were 3 times more likely to face harsher sentences than their straight peers. The piece had drawn the attention of advocacy groups, who sent lawyers to assist Mia. One, a sharp-witted trans woman named Rachel Patel, brought expertise in federal appeals. "This case reeks of prejudice," Rachel told Mia. "We'll tear it apart." But tearing apart a case in Willow Creek wasn't easy. Judge Hensley's rulings were ironclad, backed by a network of conservative allies. Mia learned that Hensley had once campaigned against same-sex marriage, her speeches laced with calls for traditional values. The judge's bias wasn't just personal, it was institutional. Mia and Rachel pored over Ethan's trial transcript, finding inconsistencies. Witnesses who weren't called, evidence ignored, and a jury swayed by Mason's influence. They filed a motion for a retrial, but Hensley rejected it without a hearing. In the detention center, Ethan tried to hold on to hope. He'd been moved to solitary after a guard caught him sketching a rainbow in his notebook. "No propaganda here," the guard sneered, tossing the notebook in the trash. Ethan's only solace was the letters from his mother, Sarah, and Lucas. Sarah wrote about the rally, about strangers fighting for him. Lucas sent a photo of the crowd, with a note, "You're not alone, kid." Ethan traced the words with his finger, fighting tears. The night before the federal review, Mia met Lucas at a diner on the edge of town. The fluorescent lights buzzed above them as they sipped coffee, their faces heavy with exhaustion. "If this fails," Mia said, "Ethan's gone for good. Life without parole for a kid who threw one punch." Lucas shook his head. "It's not about the punch. It's about who he is. This town wants to erase him." Lucas shared his own story. Growing up in Cleveland, he'd been kicked out at 16 for being gay. He'd survived on the streets, found a chosen family, and built a life as a social worker. "Ethan reminds me of me," he said, "scared but stubborn. We can't let him disappear." Mia nodded, her resolve hardening. She'd faced her own battles, microaggressions in law school, judges who dismissed her accent. This fight was bigger than her, bigger than Ethan. It was about every kid who'd been punished for existing. The federal review was held in Cleveland, a 2-hour drive from Willow Creek. Mia, Rachel, and Lucas arrived at the federal courthouse, a sleek building that felt worlds away from Willow Creek's crumbling halls. The room was packed. Reporters, activists, and a few Willow Creek residents, including Sarah, who sat clutching a photo of Ethan as a child. The lead attorney from the Attorney General's office, a no-nonsense woman named Carlin Gwynn, laid out the case. Ethan's sentence violated federal guidelines on juvenile justice and equality under the law. Judge Hensley was called to testify. She sat rigid, her gray hair pulled tight, defending her ruling. "The defendant showed no remorse," she said. "He posed a danger to the community." Mia's blood boiled. She presented evidence of Derek's aggression, witness statements, and Emily's articles exposing the town's bias. Carlin Gwynn pressed Hensley on the sentence's severity, citing national standards. The judge faltered, her answers vague. As the hearing ended, Carla pulled Mia aside. "We're pushing for a retrial, but it's not guaranteed. The Attorney General is watching closely. Keep the pressure on." Mia nodded, but her heart sank. A retrial could take months, and Ethan was fading in detention. Lucas, sensing her doubt, squeezed her shoulder. "We've got this," he said. "For Ethan." Back in Willow Creek, the rally had sparked a shift. Some townsfolk, moved by Emily's articles, began questioning the sentence. A local pastor, Reverend James, spoke out at church, urging compassion. "Judge not, lest ye be judged," he said, earning glares from Mason's allies but nods from others. The tide was turning, but slowly. Ethan, unaware of the hearing, sat in his cell, sketching on a scrap of paper. He drew a bird flying over a rainbow, a symbol of freedom he wasn't sure he'd ever feel again. But as he sketched, a guard approached, holding a letter. It was from Mia, promising they were fighting. Ethan clutched it, a flicker of hope igniting. The federal review's outcome would come soon, but Mason wasn't done. He planned a counter-rally, rallying the town's conservatives to protect our values. Mia and Lucas knew the fight was far from over, but they were ready. For Ethan, for love, for justice. The air in Willow Creek crackled with tension as Deputy Sheriff Mason's counter-rally took shape. On the town square, a crowd of grim-faced residents held signs reading, "Protect our kids," and "No special treatment." Mason stood at the center, his badge gleaming, his voice booming about community standards and law and order. To him, Ethan Carter wasn't a kid fighting for his life, he was a symbol of everything Mason feared. Change, difference, a world he couldn't control. Mia Alvarez watched from a distance, her stomach churning. She'd seen this before, fear dressed up as righteousness. Beside her, Lucas Reed handed out flyers with Ethan's face, his warm brown eyes staring out from the paper. "They can shout all they want," Lucas said. "The truth is louder." But the truth felt fragile in a town where power spoke first. The federal review had ended without a ruling, leaving Mia, Lucas, and Ethan's supporters in limbo. Carlin Gwynn, the Attorney General's representative, had promised a decision within days, but each hour felt like a lifetime. Mia spent her nights drafting arguments, imagining Ethan in his cell, his spirit eroding. She'd visited him once since the hearing, his thin frame swallowed by the jumpsuit. "Do you think I'll get out?" he'd asked, his voice small. Mia had forced a smile. "We're fighting, Ethan. Don't give up." Lucas, meanwhile, was mobilizing. His LGBT support group, once a quiet gathering of 8, had swelled to dozens, fueled by Ethan's story. They met in the community center, sharing stories of their own struggles. A 22-year-old non-binary college student, Alex Parker, designed a website to spread Ethan's case, complete with a petition that had 50,000 signatures and counting. Emily Chen's articles kept the pressure on, her latest piece exposing Mason's history of targeting marginalized kids. But Mason wasn't backing down. He leaned on his allies in the sheriff's department, spreading rumors that Ethan had been planning worse than a fistfight. He even pressured a witness, a nervous 16-year-old named Sophie, to recant her statement about Derek's aggression. Sophie, scared of Mason's influence, wavered but held firm after Lucas coached her through a tearful phone call. "You're doing the right thing," he told her. "Ethan needs you." In the detention center, Ethan's world shrank to the size of his cell. The guards were harsher now, their slurs sharper since the rally. One, a burly man named Officer Grant, tossed Ethan's food tray on the floor, muttering, "Eat like the dog you are." Ethan bit his tongue, knowing a reaction would only make it worse. He clung to his sketches, hiding them under his mattress. Each Oni bird, a rainbow, a field under a free sky was a rebellion, a reminder he was still human. Sarah, Ethan's mother, was breaking under the strain. She'd taken leave from the diner, unable to focus. At night, she sat in Ethan's room, holding his old stuffed bear, praying for a miracle. Lucas visited her, bringing casseroles from the support group. "He's strong, Sarah," Lucas said. "Like you." Sarah shook her head, tears falling. "I should have protected him." Lucas hugged her, promising they'd fight together. The federal ruling came on a rainy Tuesday. Mia's phone buzzed as she sat in her office, surrounded by case files. It was Carlin Gwynn. "The sentence is under review for constitutional violations," she said. "We're ordering a new trial, and Ethan's being moved to a juvenile facility with better conditions." Mia's breath caught. It wasn't freedom, but it was a start. She called Lucas, who hooped so loudly she had to pull the phone away. "We're getting there," he shouted. But the victory was bittersweet. A new trial meant more waiting, more fighting. And Mason was already spinning the narrative, telling local news that the feds were meddling in Willow Creek's justice. Judge Hensley, humiliated by the review, issued a statement defending her ruling, claiming Ethan's case was about public safety. Mia knew the judge's pride was wounded, making her more dangerous. The new trial was set for 3 months out, in a federal court in Cleveland to avoid local bias. Mia and Rachel Patel began preparing, gathering new witnesses, including Caleb, Ethan's former friend. Caleb, now 18, had left Willow Creek after the bonfire incident, racked with guilt for outing Ethan. Mia tracked him down at a college in Columbus, where he was studying art. "I messed up," Caleb admitted, his voice shaky. "I want to help." Mia coached him on testifying, knowing his story could sway the jury. Lucas organized another rally, this time outside the detention center. The crowd was smaller but fiercer, with Alex's website drawing supporters from across Ohio. Reverend James joined, his presence shocking the town. "God loves Ethan," he said, holding a rainbow flag. Mason's counter-rally was smaller this time, his allies dwindling as public opinion shifted. Emily's articles had reached national TV, and a segment on CNN called Ethan's Case a miscarriage of justice. Ethan heard about the ruling through Mia's letter. He sat on his cot, rereading her words. "New trial, new chance. Hang on." For the first time in months, he smiled. He pulled out a sketch, adding a sun to the rainbow sky. But as he drew, Officer Grant appeared, snatching the paper. "No rainbows here," he growled, tearing it up. Ethan's heart sank, but he refused to break. He closed his eyes, picturing the rally, the flags, the people fighting for him. Mia and Lucas met that night, planning their next steps. The new trial was a lifeline, but Mason's influence still loomed, and Hensley's allies were circling. "We need to expose the whole system," Mia said. "Not just for Ethan, but for every kid like him." Lucas nodded, his eyes fierce. "Let's shake this town to its core." Rain lashed the windows of Mia Alvarez's Cleveland apartment as she prepared for Ethan's new trial. Her desk was a battlefield of legal pads, highlighted case law, and crumpled coffee cups. Rachel Patel sat across from her, laptop open, cross-referencing witness statements. The federal court date was 2 months away, and every day felt like a race against time. Ethan's story had become a national flashpoint, but in Willow Creek, the old guard clung to power like a sinking ship to its anchor. Mia's phone buzzed with a text from Lucas Reed. "Check the news. Mason's at it again." She flipped on the TV, where Deputy Sheriff Mason stood at a podium, decrying outside agitators ruining Willow Creek's values. His words were slick, rehearsed, but his eyes betrayed panic. The Federal Review had dented his authority, and Emily Chen's relentless reporting had exposed his history of strong-arming witnesses. Mia clenched her fists. Mason wasn't just fighting for his son, was fighting for a worldview that was crumbling. In the juvenile facility, Ethan's life had improved slightly. The new center, an hour from Willow Creek, had kinder staff, and he was allowed art supplies. He spent hours sketching, his drawings now filled with hope. A crowd holding rainbow flags, a courtroom with sunlight streaming in. But the scars of his first months in detention lingered. Nightmares woke him, visions of Officer Grant's sneer or Derek's fist. Letters from his mother and Lucas kept him grounded. Sarah wrote, "I'm so proud of you, baby. Stay strong." Lucas sent updates about the rallies, promising, "We're bringing you home." Lucas was tireless. His support group had become a movement, with members driving from Cincinnati and Columbus to join the cause. Alex Parker's website now had 100,000 petition signatures, and their social media campaign, Free Ethan Carter, trended weekly. Lucas partnered with a national LGBT organization, which sent a seasoned strategist, Maria Torres, to help. Maria, a 40-year-old Puerto Rican lesbian, brought a calm ferocity to the team. "This isn't just about Ethan," she told Lucas. "It's about dismantling a system that punishes kids for who they are." Mia and Rachel built an airtight case. Caleb's testimony was their ace. He'd confirmed Derek started the fight, driven by homophobic rage. They also secured Sophie, the 16-year-old witness, who'd found courage after Lucas's coaching. Another witness, a quiet kid named Jamal, came forward, admitting he'd seen Derek shove Ethan first, but Mason's influence still loomed. He'd been spotted talking to Sophie's parents, and Mia worried he'd intimidate Jamal too. Emily Chen's reporting kept the pressure on. Her latest piece revealed that Judge Hensley had received campaign donations from Mason's family, a conflict of interest that sparked calls for her recusal. The judge refused, issuing a statement about her impartiality. Mia scoffed. "Impartial?" She sentenced a kid to life for a fistfight. Rachel nodded, her eyes steely. "We'll make the feds see it." In Willow Creek, the town was splitting. Reverend James's sermons about love and justice drew new faces to his church, including parents who'd once backed Mason. One, a 45-year-old mechanic named Tom Harper, approached Lucas after a service. "I was wrong about Ethan," he said, head bowed. "My son's gay. I don't want him facing what Ethan did." Lucas shook his hand, a spark of hope igniting. If even Willow Creek could change, maybe Ethan had a chance. The new trial was a media circus. Reporters swarmed the Cleveland courthouse, cameras flashing as Mia, Rachel, and Lucas arrived. Sarah sat in the front row, clutching Ethan's childhood photo. Ethan, brought in under guard, looked older than his 17 years, his eyes hollow but defiant. Mia leaned over, whispering, "We've got this." He nodded, a flicker of trust in his gaze. The prosecution, led by a state attorney loyal to Hensley, painted Ethan as a violent delinquent. They downplayed Derek's aggression, claiming Ethan provoked the fight with his lifestyle. Mia's blood boiled, but she stayed composed, presenting Caleb's testimony. Caleb, nervous but resolute, described Derek's slurs and shoves. "Ethan was defending himself," he said, his voice cracking. The jury leaned forward, listening. Sophie testified next, her hands shaking. "Derek hit first," she said. "He called Ethan awful things." Mason, in the gallery, glared, but Sophie held her ground. Jamal's testimony echoed hers, detailing Derek's pattern of bullying. Mia and Rachel exchanged a glance. This was stronger than they'd hoped. But the prosecution fought back, calling Derek to the stand. He played the victim, claiming Ethan came at him unprovoked. His story was polished, coached, but cracks showed under Rachel's cross-examination. "So you never used a slur?" she pressed. Derek hesitated, then muttered, "Maybe once." The jury murmured, sensing his lie. As the trial adjourned for the day, Mia felt a cautious optimism. Lucas, outside, rallied supporters, their rainbow flags a vivid contrast to the gray courthouse. Emily live-tweeted the proceedings, her posts amplifying the case to millions. But Mason wasn't done. That night, Mia got a call from Sophie's mother. Frantic. Someone had slashed their tires. "It's Mason," she whispered. "He's trying to scare us." Mia reported the incident to Carlin Gwynn, who promised to investigate. "If Mason's tampering with witnesses, he's done," she said. Mia hung up, her heart racing. The trial was a battle, but the war was bigger. Ethan's freedom hung on exposing a town's prejudice and surviving its retaliation. The Cleveland courthouse buzzed with tension as Ethan's trial entered its second week. Mia Alvarez stood at the defense table, her notes meticulously organized, her heart pounding. Across the room, the prosecution's attorney, a slick man named Richard Holt, leaned back, confident in his narrative. Ethan Carter was a danger, a kid who'd crossed a line. But Mia knew the truth was Messier, and she was determined to make the jury see it. Ethan sat quietly, his hands folded, his orange jumpsuit a stark reminder of the stakes. He'd grown thinner, his cheekbones sharp, but his eyes held a fire that hadn't dimmed. Mia caught his gaze, offering a nod of reassurance. Behind her, Sarah, Ethan's mother, clutched Lucas Reed's hand, her face etched with hope and fear. Lucas, ever the anchor, whispered, "He's holding up, so are we." The defense called its final witnesses. A school counselor, Ms. Linda Hayes, testified about Ethan's character, his kindness, his creativity, his struggle to fit in. "He was targeted for being himself," she said, her voice steady. The jury listened, some nodding, others stone-faced. Mia then called Dr. Karen Weiss, a psychologist specializing in LGBT youth. Dr. Weiss explained the trauma of hate-based violence, linking it to Ethan's defensive actions. "He wasn't fighting to harm," she said. "He was fighting to survive." Holt's cross-examination was brutal. He twisted Ethan's defiance into aggression, painting him as a kid who chose to provoke. Mia objected repeatedly, her voice sharp, but Holt's tactics sowed doubt. She countered with a video from Alex Parker's website, showing Ethan at a support group meeting, reading a poem about acceptance. His voice, soft but clear, moved the room. A juror wiped her eyes. Outside, the rally grew louder. Lucas and Maria Torres led hundreds, their chants echoing through the courthouse windows. Rainbow flags mixed with signs reading "Justice for Ethan." Emily Chen's live updates kept the world watching, her tweets shared by celebrities and activists. But across the street, Mason's counter-protesters lingered, smaller but angrier, their signs venomous. Mason himself stood apart, his phone pressed to his ear, his face dark. Mia suspected he was plotting, but she had no proof yet. That evening, Carlin Gwynn called Mia with news. "We're investigating Mason for witness tampering," she said. "Sophie's tires, threats to Jamal's family, it's adding up. Keep your witnesses safe." Mia relayed the news to Lucas and Rachel, who tightened security around their key players. Sophie's family moved to a relative's house in Columbus, and Jamal's parents agreed to police protection. In the juvenile facility, Ethan received a surprise visitor, Caleb. The guards allowed a brief meeting supervised. Caleb, guilt heavy in his eyes, apologized. "I should have stood by you," he said. Ethan, quiet for a moment, nodded. "You're here now." They talked about art, about the past, a fragile bridge rebuilding between them. When Caleb left, Ethan felt lighter, like a piece of his old self had returned. The trial's closing arguments loomed. Mia and Rachel spent hours crafting theirs, emphasizing Ethan's youth, the hate he'd faced, and the disproportionate sentence. Holt, they knew, would lean on fear, portraying Ethan as a threat to decent society. Mia practiced her speech in her apartment, her voice breaking as she imagined Ethan's future. "He's not a criminal," she said to her reflection. "He's a kid who deserves a chance." The day of closing arguments, the courtroom was packed. Sarah wore a rainbow pin, a quiet rebellion. Lucas sat beside her, his presence steadying. Mia stood, her voice clear and fierce. "Ethan Carter is not a villain. He's a 17-year-old who fought back against hate. This trial isn't just about a fistfight, it's about whether we punish kids for who they love." The jury listened, rapt, as she detailed the evidence, the bias, the injustice. Holt's argument was predictably cold. "Actions have consequences," he said, echoing Hensley's original ruling. Ethan Carter chose violence. Mia watched the jury, searching for signs of sway. Some looked troubled, others unreadable. Rachel whispered, "You nailed it. Now we wait." The jury deliberated for 2 days. Mia barely slept, her mind replaying every moment of the trial. Lucas kept the rallies going, his voice hoarse but unyielding. Sarah spent hours praying, her faith tested but unbroken. Ethan, in his cell, sketched a new drawing, a rainbow breaking through storm clouds. He didn't know if he'd go free, but he held on to the image, a lifeline. On the 3rd day, the jury returned. The courtroom fell silent as the foreperson stood. "We find the defendant, Ethan Carter, not guilty of assault with intent to harm." Sarah gasped, collapsing into Lucas's arms. Ethan's eyes widened, tears spilling as he looked at Mia. She smiled, her own eyes wet. The judge, a federal appointee named Judge Torres, nodded. "Mr. Carter, you are free to go." But the victory was interrupted. As the room buzzed, a court clerk rushed in, holding a phone. "It's the U.S. Attorney General," she said, handing it to Judge Torres. The room froze. Rebecca Lawson's voice crackled through the speaker. "This case exposed a grave injustice. We're launching a federal investigation into Willow Creek's justice system." Mia's heart leapt. Lucas grinned, whispering, "This is bigger than we thought." Mason, in the back, paled, his empire crumbling. Ethan, still processing his freedom, hugged Sarah, his sobs muffled against her shoulder. The fight wasn't over, but for now he was free. Ethan Carter stepped out of the Cleveland courthouse into a sea of rainbow flags and cheering supporters. The autumn air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue, and for the first time in months, he felt the weight of his chains lift. At 17, he was free, but the scars of his ordeal lingered in his wary eyes and the way his hands shook as he hugged his mother, Sarah. Mia Alvarez stood beside him, her smile weary but triumphant. Lucas Reed lifted Ethan onto his shoulders, the crowd roaring as rainbow confetti rained down. Emily Chun snapped photos, her camera capturing the joy and defiance of the moment. But even in victory, Mia sensed the storm wasn't over. Deputy Sheriff Mason's absence from the courthouse was conspicuous, and the Attorney General's investigation loomed like thunder on the horizon. Back in Willow Creek, the town was a powder keg. Ethan's acquittal split the community further. Reverend James's church overflowed with new members seeking understanding, while Mason's allies doubled down, calling the verdict a travesty. Mason himself was under scrutiny. Carlin Nguyen's team had evidence of his witness tampering text messages to Sophie's parents, veiled threats to Jamal's family. The feds were building a case, and Mason knew it. Ethan returned home to Sarah's small house, its walls still marked by the brick thrown through his window a year ago. Sarah had kept his room untouched, his sketches pinned to the walls. That night, they sat together eating pizza, laughing for the first time in months. But Ethan's laughter faded when he saw the news. Mason was holding a town hall, rallying his base. "They're not done with me," Ethan whispered. Sarah squeezed his hand. "They don't get to win." Mia and Rachel Patel met with Carlin Nguyen in Cleveland to discuss the investigation. Carla was blunt. "Mason's actions violated federal law. We're looking at obstruction of justice, maybe more. But he's got allies in high places." She warned them to stay vigilant. Willow Creek's old guard wouldn't go quietly. Mia nodded, her mind already on protecting Ethan. Rachel suggested a restraining order against Mason, which they filed the next day. Lucas, meanwhile, was planning a victory rally, but his focus was on Ethan's future. He needs more than freedom, Lucas told Maria Torres. He needs a chance to heal. Maria connected Ethan with a counselor specializing in trauma, and Lucas offered him a part-time job at the community center, helping with the LGBT support group. Ethan hesitated, unsure if he was ready to be a role model. "You already are," Lucas said. "You survived." Ethan started counseling, his sessions raw and painful. He spoke of the detention center, the slurs, the fear that he'd never see daylight again. But he also spoke of hope, the rallies, the letters, the strangers who'd fought for him. His counselor, Dr. Ellis, encouraged him to keep sketching, calling it his voice. Ethan's latest drawing was of a phoenix rising from a rainbow, a symbol of his rebirth. Emily Chen's reporting didn't stop with the verdict. Her next article, "The Cost of Hate: How a Town Failed Ethan Carter," dug into Willow Creek's history of discrimination. She interviewed Tom Harper, the mechanic who'd come around after learning his son was gay. "I was part of the problem," Tom admitted. "Now I want to be part of the solution." The article sparked a national conversation, with calls for reform in juvenile justice systems. In Willow Creek, change was slow but undeniable. Reverend James organized a town dialogue, inviting Lucas and Maria to speak. To everyone's surprise, some of Mason's supporters attended, including a retired teacher, Mrs. Clara Evans, who admitted she'd been wrong about Ethan. "I didn't understand," she said, tears in her eyes. "I do now." Lucas nodded, offering her a rainbow pin. "It's never too late," he said. But Mason wasn't ready to surrender. He hired a lawyer, a sharp-talking man from Cincinnati, to fight the federal charges. At the town hall, he played the victim, claiming the Attorney General was targeting him for standing up for family values. His words rallied his base, but the crowd was smaller than before. Even Derek, his son, seemed distant, avoiding the spotlight. Mia suspected Derek was wrestling with guilt, but she had no time to chase that thread. Ethan, meanwhile, started at the community center, timid at first. He led an art workshop for the support group, teaching kids to draw their dreams. A 14-year-old trans girl named Lily shyly showed him her sketch of a butterfly. "It's me," she whispered. Ethan smiled, seeing himself in her. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice steady. For the first time, he felt like he belonged. The federal investigation gained traction. Carla's team uncovered financial ties between Mason and Judge Hensley, suggesting a deeper corruption. Hensley was suspended pending review, a shock that rippled through Willow Creek. Mia and Rachel prepared to testify, their evidence damning. But the night before their deposition, Mia's car was vandalized again, the word traitor scratched into the hood. She reported it to Carla, who tightened security. Ethan, unaware of the escalating threats, focused on rebuilding. He reconnected with Caleb, who visited Willow Creek for the first time since leaving. They walked by the lake, the site of the fight, and talked. "I'm sorry I ran," Caleb said. Ethan shrugged. "You came back." It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. As the investigation closed in, Mason's desperation grew. Mia knew the final battle was coming, and she was ready to fight for Ethan, for justice, for a town that could be better. The federal investigation into Willow Creek's justice system sent shockwaves through the town. Deputy Sheriff Mason's name was plastered across headlines, his badge tarnished by allegations of witness tampering and corruption. Mia Alvarez and Rachel Patel prepared for their depositions, their evidence meticulously gathered, text messages, financial records, and witness accounts linking Mason to a pattern of abuse. But the closer they got to exposing him, the more dangerous he became. Mia woke to a brick through her apartment window, a note taped to it. "Back off," she called Carlin Gwynn, who sent federal agents to Willow Creek. "He's cornered," Carla said. "Cornered men do desperate things." Mia nodded, her resolve unshaken. She'd faced intimidation before growing up Latina in a world that often dismissed her had taught her to stand tall. But she worried for Ethan, who was still finding his footing. Ethan, now 18, was adjusting to freedom. He worked at the community center with Lucas Reed, teaching art to kids like Lily, the trans girl who'd become his shadow. Her shy smiles and bold sketches reminded Ethan of his own resilience. He still had nightmares flashes of Officer Grant's cruelty, Derek's fist, but his counseling sessions with Dr. Ellis helped. "You're not defined by what they did to you," Dr. Ellis said. Ethan clung to that, his drawings growing brighter, filled with hope. Lucas was a pillar, his support group now a haven for dozens of LGBT youth. He organized a community art show featuring Ethan's Phoenix painting. The event drew a crowd, including Reverend James and Tom Harper, whose son, Nate, had come out as gay. Nate, 16, joined the support group, his quiet courage inspiring Ethan. "You're like a hero," Nate told him. Ethan laughed, uncomfortable. "I'm just me." But inside, he felt a spark of purpose. Emily Chen's reporting kept the pressure on. Her latest piece detailed Mason's financial ties to Judge Hensley, who was now facing disbarment. The article sparked protests outside the sheriff's office, with chants of "Justice for Ethan." Mason, holed up in his office, lashed out in a local radio interview, calling the investigation a witch hunt. But his voice cracked, betraying fear. Even Derek, his son, was pulling away, skipping the town hall to avoid the spotlight. Sarah, Ethan's mother, was rebuilding too. She returned to the diner, her rainbow pin a quiet statement. Customers who'd once whispered about Ethan now offered kind words, some even donating to his college fund, started by Lucas. Sarah cried when she saw the total. $10,000, enough for Ethan's first year. "He's got a future," she told Lucas, her voice thick. Lucas hugged her. "He always did." Mia and Rachel's depositions were a turning point. In a sterile federal office, they presented their evidence. Mason's texts to Sophie's parents, bank records showing payments to Hensley's campaign, and Jamal's testimony about veiled threats. Carlin Gwynn listened, her face grim. "This is enough for charges," she said. "Obstruction, conspiracy, maybe racketeering." Mia exhaled, relief mixing with dread. Mason wouldn't go down without a fight. That night, Lucas hosted a vigil for Ethan and other LGBT youth who'd faced injustice. The town square glowed with candles, rainbow flags draped over shoulders. Ethan spoke, his voice shaky but clear. "I thought I'd be in a cell forever," he said. "But you all showed me I wasn't alone." The crowd cheered, and Lily hugged him, her butterfly sketch pinned to her jacket. Reverend James closed the vigil with a prayer for healing, his words bridging divides. But Mason struck back. A fire broke out at the community center, destroying Ethan's Phoenix painting. The fire department ruled it arson, and security footage showed a figure in a hoodie fleeing the scene. Mia suspected Mason but lacked proof. Lucas, devastated, vowed to rebuild. "They can burn our art," he said, "but not our spirit." Ethan, heartbroken over his painting, started a new one, a rainbow rising from ashes. Carla's team moved fast. Mason was arrested on federal charges, his badge stripped. The news hit Willow Creek like a bomb. His supporters protested, but their numbers dwindled. Derek, now 20, visited Mia, his face pale. "I didn't know my dad would go this far," he said. "I'm sorry." Mia studied him, seeing genuine remorse. "Help us make it right," she said. Derek nodded, offering to testify about his father's actions. Ethan's life was slowly coming together. He enrolled in community college, studying art, his tuition covered by the fund. Caleb visited often, their friendship mending. One evening by the lake, Caleb gave Ethan a sketchbook. "For your next masterpiece," he said. Ethan smiled, his heart lighter. He wasn't fully healed, but he was moving forward. The federal case against Mason loomed, promising to expose Willow Creek's rot. Mia, Lucas, and Rachel prepared to testify, knowing the town would never be the same. Ethan, watching from the sidelines, felt a mix of fear and hope. He'd survived the worst, But the fight for justice was just beginning. The arrest of Deputy Sheriff Mason sent Willow Creek into a tailspin. News vans lined the town square, reporters swarming as federal agents led Mason away in handcuffs. His face, once a symbol of authority, was now a mask of defiance and fear. Mia Alvarez watched from her office, her heart pounding with cautious triumph. The federal case against Mason was airtight, but she knew better than to underestimate a man with nothing left to lose. Ethan Carter, now settled into his first semester at community college, tried to focus on his art classes. His latest painting, a rainbow rising from ashes, was nearly complete, a testament to his survival. But the news of Mason's arrest brought back memories of that night by the lake, of Derek's fist, of the system that had tried to erase him. He confided in Dr. Ellis, his counselor, about the fear that lingered. "I'm free, but I keep waiting for the next punch," he said. Dr. Ellis nodded. "Healing takes time. You're stronger than you know." Lucas Reed was rebuilding the community center, its walls scorched but standing. Donations poured in, fueled by Emily Chen's reporting and Alex Parker's Free Ethan Carter campaign. The center became a beacon, not just for LGBT youth, but for anyone seeking acceptance. Lucas hired Ethan to paint a mural on the rebuilt wall, a project that gave Ethan purpose. Lily, the trans teen, helped, her butterfly sketches inspiring Ethan's design, a vibrant rainbow wrapping around a phoenix. Mia and Rachel Patel prepared for the federal trial, set to begin in Cleveland. Carlin Nguyen's team had expanded the case, charging Mason with obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and conspiracy. Judge Hensley, now disbarred, was named a co-conspirator, her campaign funds traced to Mason's allies. Derek, Mason's son, agreed to testify, a decision that shocked Mia. "He's scared," she told Rachel. "But he's doing it." Derek's testimony would detail his father's pressure to lie about the fight, exposing the corruption at Willow Creek's core. Sarah, Ethan's mother, found new strength. She joined Lucas's support group, sharing her story of raising Ethan alone, of the guilt she'd carried. "I thought I failed him," she told the group, tears falling. Lily's mother, sitting beside her, squeezed her hand. "You raised a fighter," she said. Sarah smiled, wearing her rainbow pin with pride. She started volunteering at the diner's community nights, serving meals to LGBT youth and their families. Emily's latest article, "The Fall of Willow Creek's Old Guard," went viral, detailing Mason's arrest and Hensley's disgrace. It included an interview with Reverend James, who called for the town to heal. "We've hurt too many," he said. "It's time to listen." The article reached the White House, prompting a statement from the U.S. Attorney General Rebecca Lawson, praising Ethan's courage and vowing reform. The federal trial began on a snowy January morning. The Cleveland courthouse was packed, with Ethan, Sarah, Lucas, and Maria Torres in the front row. Mia and Rachel presented their evidence: Mason's texts, bank records, and Derek's testimony. Derek took the stand, his voice trembling. "My dad told me to lie about Ethan," he said. "He said it was to protect me, but it was to protect him." The jury listened, stone-faced, as Mason glared from the defense table. Carlin Nguyen's cross-examination was relentless, exposing Mason's pattern of intimidation. She played a recorded call where Mason threatened Sophie's father, his voice cold. "You want your girl safe? Keep her quiet." The courtroom gasped. Mia watched the jury, seeing disgust in their eyes. Rachel whispered, "He's done." But Mason's lawyer fought back, painting him as a dedicated officer, targeted by radical activists. He called witnesses from Willow Creek, including a deputy who claimed Mason was misunderstood. Mia countered with Jamal's testimony, who described Mason's threats to his family. Sophie, now 17, testified too, her voice steady. "He scared me, but I'm not scared anymore," she said. The jury nodded, moved by her courage. Outside, Lucas led a vigil, the snow falling softly as candles glowed. Ethan joined, his mural nearly complete. He spoke to the crowd, his voice stronger now. "I used to think I didn't belong," he said. But you showed me I do. Lily hugged him, her butterfly pin gleaming. Reverend James closed with a prayer, his congregation now a mix of old and new Willow Creek. The trial lasted 2 weeks, each day peeling back layers of corruption. Mia and Rachel worked late, fueled by coffee and determination. Ethan visited the courthouse when he could, sketching in the gallery. One drawing showed Mia at the defense table, a warrior in a suit. He gave it to her shyly. "You saved me," he said. Mia's eyes welled. "We saved each other." As the jury deliberated, Willow Creek held its breath. Mason's arrest had fractured his base, with even some allies turning away. Tom Harper's son, Nate, joined the vigil, his presence a quiet rebellion. Ethan watched, realizing the town was changing not fully, but enough to hope. His mural, now finished, was unveiled at the community center, drawing tears and applause. The verdict was coming, and with it, the chance to close a painful chapter. But Ethan knew the fight for acceptance was far from over. The Cleveland courthouse was silent as the jury filed in, their faces unreadable. Ethan Carter sat between his mother, Sarah, and Lucas Reed, his heart hammering. At 18, he'd faced a year of hell arrest, a life sentence, detention, but today wasn't about him. It was about holding Deputy Sheriff Mason accountable, about dismantling the system that had nearly destroyed him. Mia Alvarez stood at the prosecution's table, her hands steady despite the sleepless nights. Rachel Patel, beside her, radiated quiet confidence. Carlin Gwynn, the federal attorney, had led the charge, her evidence against Mason overwhelming. Witness tampering, conspiracy, obstruction of justice. The jury's verdict would decide if Willow Creek could begin to heal or if hate would win again. The foreperson stood. "We find the defendant, Ronald Mason, guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted. Sarah sobbed, hugging Ethan. Lucas pumped his fist, whispering, "We did it." Mason's face crumpled, his defiance shattered. His lawyer slumped, defeated. Mia and Rachel exchanged a look of relief, but their work wasn't done. Judge Hensley's trial was next, and the system needed more than one conviction to change. Ethan stepped outside, the winter air biting his cheeks. Reporters swarmed, but Lucas shielded him, guiding him to the community center's van. The town square was alive with supporters, rainbow flags waving despite the snow. Emily Chun was there, her camera capturing Ethan's tentative smile. Her final article, "Justice for Ethan, A Town Faces Its Past," was already drafted, ready to tell the world how one teen's fight had sparked a reckoning. Back in Willow Creek, the guilty verdict shook the town's foundations. Mason's allies, once vocal, went quiet. Some, like Mrs. Clara Evans, the retired teacher, publicly apologized for supporting him. "I was blind," she said at Reverend James's church, her voice trembling. "I won't be again." The church, once a stronghold of tradition, now hosted weekly dialogues on acceptance, drawing diverse crowds. Ethan threw himself into his mural, now a symbol of Willow Creek's shift. The phoenix, wrapped in a rainbow, soared across the community center's wall, its colors vivid against the rebuilt facade. Lily, the trans teen, painted butterflies around it, her confidence growing. Nate, Tom Harper's son, added his own Tucha sun breaking through clouds. Ethan watched, proud, realizing he was no longer just a survivor but a leader. Sarah, emboldened by the verdict, started a scholarship fund for LGBT youth, using donations from Ethan's college fund as seed money. She named it the Carter Fund, a tribute to her son's resilience. Lucas helped her organize, his support group now a nonprofit with national backing. Maria Torres, the strategist, secured grants to expand the community center, envisioning a safe space for kids across Ohio. Mia and Rachel prepared for Hensley's trial, a smaller but critical battle. Evidence of her corruption campaign funds tied to Mason, biased rulings was damning. Carlin Gwynn hinted at a plea deal, but Mia wanted a public trial. "People need to see the truth," she told Rachel. "No more hiding." Rachel agreed, her own history as a trans woman fueling her fight. Ethan's college life was blossoming. His art professor, Ms. Rivera praised his Phoenix painting, entering it in a state exhibition. Ethan, shy about the spotlight, agreed after Caleb pushed him. "You're an artist," Caleb said, their friendship now stronger than ever. They spent evenings sketching by the lake, reclaiming the space where Ethan's nightmare began. One night, Caleb admitted, "I loved you back then. I was just scared." Ethan paused, then smiled. "I know. I'm not scared anymore." The community center's grand reopening was a celebration. Hundreds gathered, including Reverend James, Tom Harper, and even Derek, who approached Ethan hesitantly. "I'm sorry," Derek said, his voice low, "for everything." Ethan studied him, seeing a kid caught in his father's shadow. "Work on being better," Ethan said, not forgiving but not hating. Derek nodded, walking away, a weight lifted. Emily's article hit the stands, detailing Mason's conviction and Ethan's journey. It ended with a quote from Ethan, "I thought I'd be forgotten, but you all remembered me." The piece won awards, and Emily donated the prize money to the Carter Fund. Alex Parker's website became a platform for other LGBT youth to share their stories, amplifying voices nationwide. Mia, exhausted but fulfilled, took a rare night off, sitting with Lucas at the diner. "We changed something," she said, sipping coffee. Lucas grinned. "We changed everything." But both knew the fight wasn't over. Hensley's trial loomed, and other towns like Willow Creek needed shaking up. Ethan, painting late at the community center, felt a quiet peace. His mural was done, his future open. He wasn't the scared kid under the bleachers anymore. He was Ethan Carter, survivor, artist, voice. As he added the final Strokia star above the Phoenix, knew he'd carry the fight forward, for himself and for every kid who needed hope. Spring bloomed in Willow Creek, the air soft with promise. Ethan Carter stood before his mural at the community center, its phoenix and rainbow glowing under the morning sun. At 18, he was no longer the boy who'd faced a life sentence for being himself. He was a symbol, a spark that had ignited change in a town once bound by fear. The federal trial of Judge Margaret Hensley was the final reckoning. Mia Alvarez and Rachel Patel presented their case in Cleveland, their evidence unyielding. Hensley's biased rulings, her financial ties to Mason, her role in Ethan's unjust sentence. The courtroom was quieter than Mason's trial, but the stakes were just as high. A guilty verdict would signal that no one was above the law, not even a judge. Hensley took the stand, her composure cracking under Carla Nguyen's questioning. "Did you sentence Ethan Carter to life because of his sexuality?" Carla asked. Hensley stammered, claiming impartiality, but her campaign speeches against deviant lifestyles were read aloud. The jury's verdict was swift, guilty of judicial misconduct and conspiracy. Hensley was disbarred permanently, her legacy shattered. Mia exhaled, her shoulders light for the first time in months. Willow Creek felt the impact. The sheriff's department, under new leadership, implemented bias training, prompted by the federal investigation. Reverend James's church became a hub for reconciliation, hosting workshops with Lucas Reed's support group. Tom Harper and his son, Nate, attended, their presence a bridge between old and new Willow Creek. Even Mrs. Clara Evans volunteered, her rainbow pin a quiet apology for her past. Ethan's life was full. His Phoenix painting won first place at the state exhibition, earning him a scholarship to an art school in Chicago. He hesitated, unsure about leaving Sarah and the community center. Sarah, now a leader in the Carter Fund, hugged him. "Go shine, baby," she said. "We'll be here." Lucas, too, pushed him. "You've given us enough. Now give yourself something." The community center thrived, its mural a tourist draw. Lily, now 15, led art workshops, her confidence blooming. She and Ethan stayed close, texting about their dreams. She wanted to be a fashion designer, he an illustrator. Caleb, now a regular visitor, joined them, his sketchbook filled with portraits of Ethan. Their bond deepened, not quite romance but a love built on trust. "You're my family," Ethan told him one night by the lake, the stars above them. Caleb smiled. "Always." Emily Chen's final article, From a Cell to a Canvas, Ethan Carter's Triumph, closed the chapter. It detailed the trials, the mural, the town's transformation. Ethan showed us that love can outlast hate, she wrote. The piece was syndicated globally, inspiring similar movements in small towns. Alex Parker's website evolved into a nonprofit, connecting LGBT youth with resources. Mia took a new job with a national civil rights firm, her work on Ethan's case earning her accolades. Rachel joined her, their partnership a force for change. They visited Willow Creek often, mentoring young lawyers at the community center. Lucas expanded the support group, training facilitators across Ohio. Maria Torres secured funding for a second center, naming it after Ethan. Mason, serving a 5-year sentence, faded from Willow Creek's memory. Derek moved away, enrolling in community college, seeking redemption. Ethan sent him a letter, not forgiving but wishing him well. "Be better," he wrote, echoing their last talk. Derek kept it a reminder of his mistakes. The Carter Fund grew, supporting dozens of LGBT youth with scholarships and counseling. Sarah ran it with pride, her diner a hub for fundraisers. One evening, Ethan returned for a gala, his mural the backdrop. He spoke to a packed room, his voice steady. "I was told I didn't belong," he said. "But belonging isn't given, it's built. We built it together." The crowd stood, cheering, as Sarah wiped tears. As Ethan prepared for Chicago, he painted one last piece for Willow Creek. A canvas of the town square, rainbow flags mingling with church steeples, a phoenix soaring above. He gifted it to the community center, a thank you for their fight. Lucas hung it beside the mural, calling it Ethan's heart. On his last day in town, Ethan walked to the lake with Sarah, Lucas, and Caleb. They sat on the shore, the water calm. Ethan tossed a stone, watching the ripples. "I thought I'd never see this again," he said. Sarah hugged him. "You're free now. Fly." He nodded, his eyes on the horizon. Ethan's story didn't end in Willow Creek. In Chicago, he'd paint, learn, love, carry the lessons of his fight. He'd survived a system that tried to break him, and in doing so, he'd changed it. The phone call from the Attorney General had shaken the room, but Ethan's courage had shaken a town and beyond. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.